Hi everybody, welcome to the second social justice speech. Today we're going to be talking about community and the common good, loving your neighbors. I think we all kind of have that basic understanding of what community is and our neighbors. It's not just, one person, it's, everybody. And I found a couple of these quotes that really summarized community well for me and why it's important for us to think about it. We're going to have Brendan Walsh come talk about his work with Viva House.
But I'm just going to begin with more or less a prayer that might have a lot to do with the common good. And a lot of the stuff I'm going to be saying is really about Viva House, but it's more about what the common good is and what inequality is in Baltimore, the U.S., and the world. The thing about change. They asked you, geez, you think things are going to change? You think with Obama in we're going to change stuff? And Wallace Shawn has a different reflection. And we've seen the thing here at the soup kitchen too. You say, those people that just came in, they were here yesterday. And they're here today and they're going to be here tomorrow. Just use this when you get older, you need to have something in front. But I'm just going to begin with more or less a prayer that might have a lot to do with the common good. And a lot of the stuff I'm going to be saying is really about Viva House, but it's more about what the common good is and what inequality is in Baltimore, the U.S., and the world. The better we understand that, the better you understand the injustice, I think. But you can stop me at any time, and if you don't think what I'm saying is accurate. I used to teach high school, and we always began every class, if you don't think what I'm telling you is correct, or I'm leading you astray or something like that, say so right away, and then you check out what I'm saying versus what you believe. That sometimes went well and sometimes didn't go well. But anyway, here's this prayer. The gospel of Jesus is spoken in a world intoxicated with death, mesmerized by death, convinced of the necessary rule of death, skillfully connives with death, technologizes death, and accedes to the omnipresence of death. And Jesus says no to this omniferous power. A good man, himself powerless, stands at the side of the powerless people and says to death, no, for himself and for them. So can any of you here place before you a single child, smiling, squirming in your arms, and say, the death of this child is a fact of modern war? I accede to that death, but what can we do? I can't speak for you, but I will not wait on Obama, the Congress, or the Supreme Court to instruct me on God's word. I'm a person, you're a person, and we all can read. If a person will save his life, let that person lose it. I say to you, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you. Whatever you do to these, the least of my sisters and brothers, you do to me. Blessed are you who suffer persecution for the sake of justice. And then the key phrase with regard to the common good from the Acts of the Apostles. The whole group of believers was united heart and soul. No one claimed for personal use anything that she had, as everything they owned was held in common. None of their members was ever in want, and all who owned land or houses would sell them and bring the money from them to present to the apostles. It was then distributed to the members who might be in need. Now, if you take all those things and try to understand the common good, it's a pretty powerful kind of message of what you're supposed to do. That property, when you really look at it, is what is proper to a human being. And what is proper to every human being are all the necessities of life as a right, not charity. Dorothy Day used to say that charity was a word she could choke over, and she was more concerned with justice. So justice is making it equal, that everybody has the right to these things. There's a play that was in Baltimore several years ago. It was a play by a man named Wallace Shawn. You've seen him probably. He acts as well as writes plays. And he centers on three things. One is money. And money, he's written some fine words on it. You can think about it and see if it's the way you view it. In South Baltimore, I don't know if you go downtown very much, in the Inner Harbor, they built this massive condo. And it literally blocks out the sun. And the residents of South Baltimore, where Federal Hill is, they didn't want that built because it literally does block out the sun. And if you wanted to get a condo there, the further up you go, the more expensive. You'd pay $1 million. The developers weren't from Baltimore, they were from Singapore and London. And so they built this thing and had trouble renting it out or selling it. And they said, since we're not doing that, we don't want to pay our taxes. And the mayor at the time and the city council said, okay, you don't have to pay for it. You don't have to pay the tax. You know? So the developers walk away, they don't have to pay the tax, and it goes on like that. It goes on like this in Baltimore all the time. These stadiums that they built, as great they might be, were paid with public money, tax money. And you can't really go to a Ravens game unless you have money. You have to have a permanent seat license to buy a ticket. And today was a beautiful event. I think the news said over 200,000 people. Every seat in the stadium was filled, and on the field was filled, and then all around the stadium. So there's a possibility that 200,000, or almost 1/3 of the population of Baltimore City, was there. And that coincides with almost the population of poverty in the city, because 1 out of 4 people in Baltimore City lives below the poverty level. But here's some words of Wallace Shawn's on money. The holders of money determine what's done. They bid their money for the things they want, each one according to the amount they hold. And each bit of money determines some fraction of the day's activities. So those who have a little money determine a little. And those who have a lot of money determine a lot. And those who have no money determine nothing. What that says is that a lot of poor people have no kind of say as to what is needed and how money is spent and everything else you can think of. The other one is, you know how they tell you that you should give up some of your money? Or some people tell you, no, don't give money to beggars in the street. You've probably heard that. And downtown and all over the city, you see surveillance cameras, and there's special police on the street, and they watch people. But they watch beggars very, very carefully, because the beggars don't contribute to the society, but the business people do. And they contribute to society because they work, they make money. That's their job, they make money. And the beggar's job is to beg, forever and ever. The business people suggest that you don't give the beggars anything, not a damn thing. But the gospel says, give it all away. You got 2 coats and she's got none, give her the unused coat. It belongs to her. Do you ever think of that? That the extra coat in the closet belongs to the person who doesn't have a coat. So it's not an act of charity. It's more of an act of justice. These are very, very hard words, I think. But here's Wallace Shawn's reflection on that. Yes, a beggar can be beautiful. And a voice says, why not all of it? Why not give her all that you have? Be careful. That's a question that could poison your entire life. Your love of beauty could actually kill you. Answer the question, idiot. Don't just stand there. I can't give the beggar all that I have because, But wait a minute. I have beliefs. There's a reason why I won't give the beggar all of my money. Oh yes, I'm going to give her some of it. But there's a reason why I'm the one who has the money in the first place. And that's why I'm not going to give it all away. In other words, for God's sake, I worked for that money, I worked hard, I worked and I worked and I worked hard to make that money, and it's my money because I made it. I made that money, and so I have it, and I can spend it any way I like. And that becomes the basis of an entire life. Pretty much true, don't you think, in this country? And then there's the thing about change. You know, they ask you, geez, you think things are going to change? You think with Obama in we're going to change stuff? And Wallace Shawn has a different reflection. And we've seen the thing here at the soup kitchen too. You know, you say, those people that just came in, they were here yesterday. And they're here today and they're going to be here tomorrow. And you start wondering, they said, well, and the kids were here too. And so they haven't eaten, but they need to eat. He needs to eat, she needs to eat, the kids need to eat. And then the kids they need rent money, they need heat money, they need money for medicine, and they want work. They want work. Honest work. Hell, they need everything. And they have a right to everything. Does this madness ever end? Surely change is coming. It will change, won't it? So here's what he says. Nothing is changing in the life of the poor. There is no change. Gradual change is not happening. It's not going to happen. It was only something we talked about. Inspired by artists and parents to adopt good values and feel sympathy for the poor, and vote for sincere politicians who believe fervently in gradual change. Do not change the lives of the poor. The chambermaid's condition is not temporary. A life sentence has been passed on her. She's to clean for me and to sleep in filth. Not she's to clean for me today, and I'm to clean for her tomorrow, and I'm to clean for her next year. No, no. She's to sleep in filth tonight, and I'm to sleep in filth tomorrow night or some other night. No, no, that's not the arrangement. The arrangement is the sentence says that she will serve, and then on the next day she will serve, and then she will serve right up until her death. And I don't know about you, but maybe you don't think the same way about what Wallace Shawn says, or really about what the gospel says. But it's a very, very hard thing. It's not a gospel of cheap grace. It's a gospel that makes real, real heavy demands. And probably the best thing you can do, it seems to me, is try to think in terms of justice rather than just charity. And one way, I don't know, did anybody here join in with the Occupy movement? Or was anybody down from Loyola joining the 99% versus the 1%? And I don't know about you, but maybe you don't think the same way about what Wallace Shawn says, or really about what the gospel says. But it's a very, very hard thing. It's not a gospel of cheap grace. It's a gospel that makes real, real heavy demands. And probably the best thing you can do, it seems to me, is try to think in terms of justice rather than just charity.
I was going to ask if you could talk a little bit about the founding of Viva House and what sparked that.
I had a good friend, Dave Miller, who started a Catholic worker house in D.C., and I told him, I think I'm going to go down there and we're going to, and Willa said, no, that's what I want to do. So we both went down there, got married in 4 months, and then started Viva House up here in Baltimore.
Wow.
Pretty good. So any of you could do it too. You know, if you want to start this, you don't have to do anything. You just start it. You don't have to ask anybody's permission. There isn't, nobody can give you permission. You just do it. And all you do, that's why I handed out those sheets of paper. There's a lot of empty ones, so you can take one for a friend who missed this talk. It tells you which should you perform. Should you perform the works of mercy, or should you go along with the works of war? Or another way of looking at it is 400 U.S. citizens have as much wealth as half the population of the country. 400 families. So in regard to really income, if there were 100 people, say, in the United States, and only $100, 10 would get 90, and 90 would try to divide up that $10 that's left. But that's, you know, that's not even the way it is. It's even worse than that. And we have billionaires. But you know, nobody's ever really looked at what $1 billion is. And here's a good way to look at it. What does $1 billion look like? If you had a yearly income of $29,000, just several thousand dollars below the poverty level, and you never spent a dime, it would take you 34,482 years to make $1 billion. That's nothing. I think the owner of the Ravens has 1.5 billion. I think that's what I read. So that's how wealth is concentrated. This is poverty in the U.S. 14.3% live below the poverty level. That's about 43.6 million. 1 out of 5 is a child, and 1 out of 10 is a senior like myself. Real unemployment is really 17%, not what they've been telling you. And there's 49 million people on food stamps. And the U.S. ranks 45th among countries with regard to the disparity of health care opportunities between rich and poor. That's how you get that figure that you just go a few blocks down, really, from here, and you got people living 30 years less than people in this neighborhood. Yeah, sure.
So, just a quick question. You said real unemployment is at 17%. Could you explain that a little bit more?
Well, they give you statistics like the 7% unemployed and stuff like that, but they forget to factor in people who stop looking for work.
Thank you.
And it's even higher than 17%. This one here is definitely, I think, from Oscar Romero. The temple stands unfinished until all are housed in dignity. That's a really beautiful one. In other words, we ain't going to keep building these churches or making beautiful basilicas, 32 million down here in Baltimore, until all the poor are housed in dignity. And that's a pretty powerful thing. So, a really fine artist who died a few years ago and was a member of the Catonsville Nine. He was commissioned to do Stations of the Cross for a TV show, Channel 2 here. This would be back in the 60s. And this was his crucifixion Station of the Cross. I don't know if you ever made Stations of the Cross, but this is the one. Well, it's a really powerful thing, and Tom just calls it ghetto. If you come down to our neighborhood, we could use 1 teacher for every 5 kids, because these kids need not just teaching, they need somebody to sit down and help make sure they got food that night and the next night and breakfast the next morning, and something to do with their life rather than hang on the corner. You know? I mean, they really do. There's work. There's plenty of work. But if we keep putting money into these wars, you know, they never mention, Obama and these people, they never mention, the money went for the war. That's where the trillions are. Trillions of dollars. That's where it's gone. It's flushing it down the toilet when you do that. I mean, that's why. And he said he was going to close Guantanamo. Guantanamo's still open. Violation. They say this movie with the word 30 in it shows torture. We've agreed to torture. The country's agreed it's okay to torture people. We agreed to slavery, we agreed to torture, and we've agreed to genocide. What else can you do to yourself as a country? About courage. The most important virtue of all, according to Eamon Hennessy, was courage. Because if you didn't have courage, you couldn't do anything else. So you'd be too scared to take on the military system. And you all know what's going on. Most recently, there were 3 things I never thought the U.S. would agree to. But the U.S. has agreed to slavery. Remember, we had slavery. We still have kind of slavery. It's a bad thing to think that we're out of slavery. Slavery meant that it was free labor, right? Then we moved, after slavery, to cheap labor, right? Now, we have expendable labor. We don't need people to work. That's why there's so many people unemployed in Baltimore City. When they shut down Bethlehem Steel, they didn't ask the steel workers, are you tired of making steel? They said, no, we're going to shut it down because we're going to bring in steel from China. They didn't check with the unions to see, is it okay to do that? When they moved all of the light factory work out of our neighborhood, nobody came around and said, hey, would it be okay if we just close down and we'll move it overseas? No, they just unemployed a lot of people. So we have in our neighborhood now very close to 70% unemployment. We can document 50, but you take a ride down there, you'll see abandoned miniums all over the place. I would say that at least half of the housing in the neighborhood is abandoned. Doesn't mean somebody's not living in it, but it's abandoned for all intent and purposes. So anyway, this thing about courage is really kind of important. Our problems stem from our acceptance of this filthy, rotten system. That's where our problems stem. And this is the United States. I'm sure you got that. And the figure that spells out acceptance is somebody bent down, carrying the weight of these problems on their shoulders. And that's the filthy, rotten system. The filthy, rotten system is militarism, sexism, poverty, hunger, jails. In Dresden, that was genocide. That should bring people into a court of law. That's murder. And we still have the death penalty. How can you defend the death penalty? You defend the death penalty, well, you know, this person did a really heinous crime or he might kill a jail guard. But then if you kill that person, you're the same as the person who did the killing. It's kind of simple. And all of it is in violation of the common good and the gospel. All right, now I hear we're going to be walking to a people. Oh, sorry, Christine.
Brendan, I'm still staggered by your 70% figure in your neighborhood of unemployment.
Oh, yeah.
And
In our neighborhood, yeah.
Yeah, in your neighborhood. And I'm just wondering, could you talk a little bit about the development that's going on there with the University of Maryland, you know, spilling over? Is there any sign that they're hiring local folks for any of those positions?
No, I think what's going on there, that's where they're building, they're doing on the west side what Hopkins is doing on the east side.
Yeah.
You know, and they're starting to level houses the closer you get to Martin Luther King Boulevard. And that's zip code 30, and we're in 23. Once you get west of the Hollins Market and then going north, there's almost no change at all. As far as hiring, I don't see, if most of the kids in our neighborhood don't finish the 8th grade, there's not going to be the skills that you would need to do other than, you know, cleaning up the place. When Kate was born, they had just built Stewart Hill Elementary across the street, and it was supposed to be pre-K to the 2nd grade, and it was supposed to be open classroom and all that. And except the main thing kids in our neighborhood needed was more of structure than they needed open classroom. But as the years went on and people started leaving the neighborhood, historic preservation and stuff like that, and people leave neighborhoods for all these and stay one step ahead of the landlord and everything like that, or ahead of ahead of BG&E looking for your bill, so you move to another part and kind of like disappear. But when the neighborhood started getting less and less, then they made Stewart Hill into grades pre-K to 5. And then they made it pre-K to 8, if you can believe it. And instead of doing what I was talking about, having one kid for 5, they lessened teachers and increased the students, which was all the way. Now I think They just, this year, then they took out, they realized this is really crazy, having 14, 15-year-old kids walking around with toddlers, almost. And so now it's no longer a middle school, but still goes to 5.
Wanted to give people the opportunity to do something with this information instead of just like feeling like crap about the world. That, you know, no matter where you're at, if you know a lot of this information, or if you don't, there's different options that you can do. So one of the main things that Loyola does with Viva House is the food bags. So did Bree just step out?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
Bree, right here. Bree,
And there's that, in that green flyer tells you what that's all about.
yeah, there's flyers and there's a little display over there at the table. Just
nice.
cans
Yeah.
of food. There's a list of things that we look for.
So if you can't bring a whole bag, we would really appreciate peanut butter or just jelly or cereal, because sometimes people forget those things, or they just get peanut butter and not the jelly, or beans. We love beans because sometimes people forget beans. But yeah, we have monthly donations to bring down there, and we just love any support you can give us. And these papers that were at the front and are over here have all the items and the dates on there, and you can always email me.
Pretty soon we'll have wallet cards and postcard size mailings. They should be
Wow,
around
really?
this week,
Great.
so that you can always have it if you're at the grocery store. You can look at it quick and know
Perfect.
what other things you might want to buy. Those of you who've been in city schools probably were shocked to see some of the things that happen in the physical structure of the school, where there are not enough recreational spaces, or there might not be classrooms that are equipped for the kind of education that students should be getting in the 21st century, or it might just be things like there are peeling paint and broken doors or a busted boiler and things that just can't get replaced with the current budget. So this campaign is a campaign to rebuild or renovate all city schools within the next 10 years, working with a variety of community partners, and hopefully there will be an authority moving forward who would hold all of the individuals involved accountable to actually deliver on the resources that have been set aside for this. So Erin Bowman is a former student of Loyola, and she's working with this campaign, and they need people to knock on doors and spread the word. So you can find out more about their upcoming events on their website, transformbaltimore.org.